Hey guys, a while back I made a video showing how to install Openmediavault 5 on a Raspberry Pi 4 and set up a basic file server. So not everybody has a Raspberry Pi 4, but just about everybody I know seems to have an old PC laying around. So in this video, I'm going to show how to install Openmediavault 5 on some old PC hardware that you might have laying around to set up your own file server at home. We're also going to use this as a foundation to set up things in the future like a Plex media server or file sharing or things like that. But in order to do those things, first, we've got to set up Openmediavault 5 on some old PC hardware or new PC hardware if you want to do that instead. So let's jump over to my desktop and take a look at how to do this. Okay guys, so the first thing we need to do to get started here is actually download Openmediavault to our desktop so that we can then copy it to a USB drive. So the first thing we'll do here is we'll go to openmediavault.org/download, and I will have a link to this in the description down below. On this page, you'll see right here in this little blue text where it says here, we'll go ahead and click on that. And what we're going to do is we're going to be brought to this SourceForge page where there's lots of different options for downloads. Now, the first two obviously are for single board computers like Raspberry Pis and things like that. But what we want to do is actually go down to where it says 505, at least at the time of recording this video. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And what we're looking for is actually this first one right here that ends in .iso, and it's going to be the biggest file in here at 577.8 megabytes. So we'll go ahead and click on that, and then it will take us to a download page, but I've already downloaded this, so I'm not going to do that now. But if we come over to my desktop here, you can see that I've already got Etcher downloaded. You will need that, and I will have a link to that in the description or in the blog post, as this case may be. So what we'll do is we'll actually open up Etcher here. We'll give that just a second to pop open. Of course, it always opens in the wrong screen. So I'm going to go ahead and select my image, which I'm going to go back to my desktop here, and I'm going to find that Openmediavault 505 image that I just downloaded. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll select my target. I've got a couple of drives here, so make sure you select the right one if you've got more than one USB drive plugged in. Obviously, I don't want to write this to my 8 terabyte drive, but I do have a 16 gig drive right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue there, and then I'll click flash. Then the system will ask if I'm sure I want to do that. I'm going to say yes. This won't take very long on a USB 3 drive and plug. You can see that it's already cranking through that really quickly. So we'll go ahead and let this do its thing. Once it finishes flashing everything to that USB drive, what it will do is verify that everything has been flashed correctly, and then we're good to go. And just like that, it has completed. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually plug this into the system that we're going to be using. I'm actually going to be using a Latte Panda because it's a small single board computer with an x86 platform, but chances are you're going to be doing this on a computer of some variety. Just know that they're going to be basically similar in this instance. So let's go ahead and jump over to that screen and take a look at getting Openmediavault 5 installed on an x86 platform. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've plugged my USB drive into the computer that I'm going to be using. I've got everything hooked up. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually power it on. And then I'm going to start pressing delete and escape on my keyboard here to get into the BIOS so that I can change the boot order to boot from that USB drive. So this is the BIOS for the computer that I'm using. So what I'm going to do is go over to the boot option here, and I'm going to go into boot option 1, and I want to change that to this UEFI Kingston Data Traveler. Now yours is going to be different here, so make sure you know what kind of USB drive you're using. Again, I'm using this Kingston Traveler, so I'm going to go ahead and press enter there on my keyboard, and then I'm going to say save and exit, and then yes. So immediately we're brought to this screen. This is good, we like to see that, so I'm going to click on install. Now I'm doing everything here with just a keyboard. You won't need a mouse or anything like that. You can do all of this with just a keyboard. Now the next thing it's asking is what language do we want to use? And by default, English is selected. That's the language I want to use, so I'll press enter. It's asking where am I located? I am in the United States, so I'll click enter. and then what key map to use. Now this is basically what kind of a keyboard do you have, what keyboard layout do you have, I guess. I've got an American English keyboard, so I'm going to select that. And we will need to give this just a minute to kind of load some files into the RAM so that it can do what it needs to do. And that's what it's doing here, is it's loading those additional components. So we'll give this just a moment to do what it needs to do here. Okay, so this device, the computer that I'm using, has two different network connections, both wired and wireless. When you're running a server, it's always better to use wired if at all possible. So that's what I'm going to do here, is I'm going to select the wired connection here. Okay, so now it's asking for a host name. Now, this is how the device will be recognized, or your server, it's how your server will be recognized on the network. So by default, it's Openmediavault. I'm gonna change that to Stark, and I'll press go. And now it wants a domain name. So this is kind of a cool thing that we will touch on a bit later, but because you're not going to have this probably connected as a server, like actual to a domain name, we're going to do something, and I'm just going to call this stark.local, and we will use that stark.local later on in this video. So think about what you would want your local domain name to be as you're doing this. So I'll go ahead and click continue. So now it's asking for a root password. We're going to go ahead and type that in. Now this is for root access, if you've got to do things like SSH and things like that. So we'll go ahead and do that. It's asking what time zone I'm in now. I am in Mountain Time Zone. And as we're going through this process, it's building some information to actually do the installation. It's not installing anything just yet. It's just building a configuration for that. Now here it's saying that we've got more than one storage device detected. And that's true because there's internal storage and a USB drive in this particular case, I guess, as well as my external drive that we're going to store media on. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue here. And then it'll ask me where I'd like to install Openmediavault. So here we've got our 30 gig eMMC. Below that, we've got a 256 gig external drive, and we've got our 16 gig data traveler. Now the 16 gig data traveler is the USB drive that I used to create the installation media. This 256 gig drive is an external hard drive where I'm going to store media. So we're going to use the MMC option in this case. Yours will be different, so please make note of what hard drives you have stored, or what hard drives you have in your system, so you know which one to install to. So now that I've selected the correct installation point, I'm going to go ahead and click enter. Now here it's just saying, hey, this is what we're going to do to your hard drive. Are you sure that's what you want to do? The answer to that should be yes. So now we can kind of just give this a few minutes to do what it's going to do, and then when it's done, it'll let us know. Okay, so now it wants to look for any kind of updates that may be available. It's again asking where I'm located so that it can try to find servers closest to me. So again, I'm located in the United States, so I'll go ahead and click enter. And then it gives us a list of options where we can download these updates from. So I'm just going to use the default location there. I'm not going to use a proxy, so I'll just click enter. Okay, so here it says the installation is complete. And at this point we can go ahead and click continue, and also make sure to remove the installation media so we don't go through this process again and again. So I'll go ahead and click continue. And it'll take a second to get into the shutdown and reboot sequence. So we'll give it just a second here. And when the screen turns black, we're actually going to go ahead and remove the USB media. But we want to give it just a second, just in case it's reading anything from that USB drive. Okay, so at this point, we can go ahead and pull the USB drive. And this screen pops up that tells us that we did get the install correct. And here in about a second or two, it'll go ahead and continue with the normal boot sequence. Okay, so now we've got this black screen and there's really nothing you can do here. So what we got to do is actually go to our browser on the computer where we actually built that USB drive. So let's go back over to my main desktop and get logged in. Okay, so here we are on my main desktop here, and earlier I had mentioned that we were going to use, in my case anyway, stark.local as a domain name. So what we'll do here is we'll actually type in http://stark.local and we'll click enter. So this is our login screen here, and so what we'll do is we'll type in admin for the username, and we'll type in Openmediavault as the password, and we'll go ahead and log into that. Now, the first couple of things that you'll want to do here are pretty standard things anytime you install Openmediavault. The first is you want to change that auto logout to something like an hour. Otherwise, while you're doing setups and things like that, it'll log you out, and that'll get super frustrating. So I like to change that to 60 minutes or a day. It kind of depends on what you want to do there, but I like to set it to 60 minutes. That's just fine. And of course, the next thing we want to do here is actually change the password that we just used to log in. So originally it was Openmediavault was the password, but let's change it to something that's more relevant to you. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my password. And I'll go ahead and click save. Now that's done. So what we'll want to do is actually come up here into this yellow bar and click apply. Say yes. Now this save, this particular save usually takes longer than just about any other save that you'll run into for some reason. So we'll give this just a second to do its thing, and then we'll continue on. Oh, there we go. Okay, so next thing, let's make sure that we've got our date and time correct. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select my time zone here, and I'm just going to type in Denver because that's super close to me. We'll go ahead and use an NTP server, that's fine, and we'll click save. I've run into situations where I was doing this and it was on the wrong date and time, and I couldn't install things because the server didn't line up, or the server time didn't line up with the certificate time on the other servers, and it was a nightmare. So make sure that your time is set correctly here. Okay, so now that time update has been saved, that's good. The next thing we want to do is actually go in here and run updates. You can see that it's already done a search. It's found a bunch of updates that need to be done. I'm not sure why it does updates before, like when we were doing the install, but it needs to do them again. So we're going to go ahead and click package information up here, and that just does a select all for all of those different updates that are there. And then once we've got that checked, we'll go ahead and click upgrade, and then we're going to give it some time because this could take several minutes. Okay, so all of those updates are done now. So we can go ahead and click close here. And we're going to go ahead and reload that page, and that's great. But the next thing we'll want to do here is actually reboot the system. It's always a good idea after doing updates to go ahead and reboot. So we'll come up here to the top right. We'll go down here to where it says reboot, and we'll say yes, and we'll give this a minute or two to do its thing here. Okay, so here we are a couple of minutes later, and that update, or that reboot, will take a little longer because we just did a fair amount of updating there. So what we want to do is actually get logged back in here. And let's go back to updates just to make sure that there's nothing there that needs to be updated again. Sometimes that can happen, but not very often. So we'll go ahead and check on that. Okay, good. So the next thing that we need to do is actually install OMV Extras, and normally we would see that right under plugins right here. But since we don't have that, what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to omvextras.org. Again, this will be linked in the blog post. Since we're using OMV5 here, we're going to use this link right next to it. And again, we're looking for Openmediavault Extras. So we'll go ahead and click on this link here. We're going to go to the newest version under the 5 series. And then on this screen, we're going to go over here to Files, and we'll click on Pool, and we'll go to Main, and we'll click on O, and we'll click on Openmediavault-Extras or OMV Extras org. And then we're going to click on the link for this .deb file, not the .deb.asc, but we want to make sure that's the .deb file. So we'll go ahead and click on that. Cool. So then we can come back over to here. Since we're already on the plugins page here, we can click upload. We can click browse. We'll go to downloads, and right here is that Openmediavault OMV Extras 516 all.deb file. So we'll go ahead and click that, and we'll click open, and then we'll click OK. All right, so what we want to do now is make sure that we're on this page. We just want to search up here in this bar for extras. We'll go ahead and check that, and we'll click install, and we'll say yes. Now this OMV Extras is going to give us the opportunity to install a few extra things, or use a few extra things like Docker and Portainer and things like that. So that's why we're installing this extras Debian file here. Okay, so that's done. So now we can click close. It's going to go ahead and reload that page. And when it does, now we've got OMV Extras there. Okay, so now we have OMV Extras installed. So we'll go ahead and click on that link. And now we've just got a few more options here. The first thing I like to do here is install Docker. We'll go ahead and give this a second to install here. Okay, so now that's done. So we'll go ahead and close that. And I've had issues if I don't reboot after that. So we're gonna go ahead and reboot again. Okay, so we'll go ahead and log back in now. And we're gonna go back to OMV Extras here, and then we're gonna scroll down and we're going to install Portainer. And we'll click close. Now this has been up for 1 second, so that's good. Sometimes there are issues where it won't install, and this will just say install Portainer, and there'll be nothing here or nothing telling you that it's up. So the fact that we're seeing that is actually a good thing here. So the next thing that we'll want to go ahead and do is actually move into disks and storage and things like that. So if we come over here to the left side where it says storage and then disks, you can see I've got 2 drives in here now instead of 3, because I did take out that 16 gig USB drive. So what we've got here is this SDA, or dev/SDA, and that's our external hard drive at 250-ish gigs. So what I want to go ahead and do here is wipe this drive. I want to make sure that there's nothing on it. We're just going to do a quick format here, just because a secure format will overwrite everything with ones and zeros, or lots of ones, or something that will take a really long time to try to make sure that any data that was on there is completely erased to the best of the system's ability. I don't have anything like that I need to do, so I'm going to go ahead and click on quick. And it's done just that quickly. So next thing we want to do is go down to file systems. And here you can see that we've got our 2 main file systems, or the three file systems here that are all on the MMC flash storage on the system. But what I want to do is actually create a new file system. I want to go down here and I want to select our 250 gig drive, and I'm just going to call this files. And we want to make sure that we use the ext4, or that's what I like to use anyway, is the ext4 file system. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Yes, I want to go ahead and do that. And we'll give this just a little while to complete here. Okay, so now our file system has been successfully completed. So we'll go ahead and click on close there. So now that we've got that created, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and click on that, and we'll click mount. And that's just going to make sure that the system can have access to that drive. So now that we've done that, we've given it a second. Now we've got this yellow bar up here saying that you must click apply for the changes to take effect. So we'll go ahead and click apply, and we'll say yes. So now our file systems have been created and mounted to the system. So now we're going to start creating our shared folders. Okay, so to set up shared folders, it's actually a pretty simple process. What we're going to do is go over here into this left column where it says shared folders, and we're going to add a new share. And I'm just going to call this files. That seems easy enough. And then I'm going to select our 250 gig drive there. It's automatically filled in the path, but you can change that if you wanted to. If there were more folders in here, you could dig around and place it in one of these subdirectories. But because there are no other folders in here, we're not going to be able to do much of anything there. So we'll just leave it with files for the time being. Now, because we want this folder to be accessible to anybody on the network, what we're going to do is we're going to change the permissions down here to everyone read and write. Now, if we wanted to set up user permissions and groups and things like that, we could, but that's outside the scope of this particular video. So we've named our shared folder, we've told it where to be, we've given it a path, and we've given it permissions for everybody on the network to be able to read and write to. So we'll go ahead and click Save. Okay, so every time we add a share and it completes adding that share, what you will have to do is actually click this Apply button up here. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll click Save. Now we've created the share, but we still can't access it on the network. And what I'll do here is I'll actually pop this open. We can access our server by going to like my computer or this computer or whatever you want to call it these days, and doing //. And we can type in stark.local. And you can see that it's not doing anything here, but just to show you, I've got another server set up very similarly to this, and I've actually got that one called hulk.local, and if I do that, then you can see all of these different shares that are in here. So in order to get those shares to show up on the network, what we've got to do, since we were just in shared folders, what we've got to do is go into under services. Most everybody here is going to use SMB/CIFS. We'll go ahead and enable that, and we'll click Save. We'll go ahead and click Apply up here. And yes, we want to go ahead and save that. We'll give this just a second to do its thing. Okay, so now that that has been saved and we've got our SMB CIFS set up, now we can go over here to Shares and we can click Add. Make sure that this is enabled, so that's good. We're going to come down here. We're going to click on Files. That's the folder that we just created to share with. You can leave a comment on there if you want, but we're not going to. For public, where it says no, what we want to do is select only guests. We want to leave this folder open, like I said, for anybody on the network to be able to put files on here. So we want this to be only guests. That way there's no credentials needed or anything like that. And we'll go ahead and click Save. And again, we'll go ahead and click Apply and we'll say yes. Okay, so now we should be able to go into here, and we'll just do //. Whoops, we want to make sure that we take off all the extraneous stuff here that got saved there. So we'll go stark.local, and there is that files folder that we just created here. So just to show you that it does work, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this Openmediavault 5.05 ISO, the one that we downloaded to make this video even happen. We're just going to drag that over. And so this is a, I don't know, 500 or 600 megabyte file. Let's go ahead and click, oh, right there. It actually says it's 551 megabytes. So that shows that this is working and our file server is set up. Okay guys, so there you go. There is how to set up Openmediavault 5 on some PC hardware. Now again, we're going to use this as a foundation. You could use this just as it is, as a file server, just for file storage or a network attached storage device if you wanted to. But for future videos, we're going to use this as the foundation to set up, like I said earlier, things like Plex and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in learning how to set those things up, definitely hit subscribe so you can be notified when those videos come out. If this video is helpful, it'd be great if you guys would do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. With all that being said though, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this video. As always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you in the next video.